crazy game developers, Tate here, and welcome to Tate Games, the only talk show on the internet that's kind of a talk show about video games. Kind of. I'm sure there's plenty more out there, but I've never heard of one, so hopefully we're unique in that aspect. Today we're doing a Buildbox review. Now, to the layman out there who doesn't actually know what Buildbox is basically a program where you make games, and I like to say video games, but it kind of limits it to the basic of basic apps and games and stuff like that you find on stuff like Ketchup and other publishers like Zoo-Hoo and those other people. Very forgettable names, but Ketchup definitely stands out as one of the best publishers out there. In this case, we are comparing Unity to Buildbox, except I've bought the $100 version of Buildbox, which includes everything you can possibly imagine that you can get, and of course you guys can check the link in the description if you are interested in any of their other pricing. So upon opening up Buildbox, you're going to be presented with a screen, and it basically gives you a game type. Now, this game type can of course be manipulated later on. However, the logic that the engine takes is very limiting, and of course your game ends up being very similar to anything already on the App Store or Google Play. This could be taken as a really bad thing because it actually limits your creativity, and of course they love to say in a lot of their tutorials and a lot of their videos that Buildbox gives unlimited creativity, but unfortunately it is extremely limited for one key factor. There is absolutely no logic in the engine whatsoever. If you want to create something as simple as a button, that is already in there, but if you want to manipulate the way buttons work, that is not available to you. I did so much testing and stuff like that and never actually got to publishing a game, and I'm going to tell you why. For something like Unity, if you want to export a game, you just export it, and of course you can choose the platform in which you export it to after downloading a few of the packages and stuff like that, but in Buildbox it's a little bit different. You actually need to compile your game in separate software. For example, Eclipse can do it, and I've watched thousands of tutorials on how they do it, and it seems a little bit harder than it really should. Along with Eclipse and Android Studio is how you build up to your APK method, and of course the only real bad thing I can say about this is that not everything is in box. For something that costs something like $100, it's not exactly what you'd expect from the program. Unity, on the other hand, is a very direct export, and of course if you just click build and run, it will run it directly to your phone that's connected to it or your default device, and it's so easy and stuff like that. So it's kind of what I expected from Buildbox. Having put quite a bit of money into it, it's not exactly something that I think should not be included in the engine. You should directly be able to export to your phone for testing purposes if you so choose. Personally, I don't think that the Eclipse method is okay. That's basically my standpoint on it. I don't think that there should be extra steps needed to actually export your game to an APK, but hey, hopefully Buildbox 3 actually has some of these features involved. Of course, creating your game is incredibly easy. If you want to create a game like Flappy Bird, they literally have videos on there to create it in under 60 seconds, and it is very possible. I tried it out myself, and after only using it for about a day, you kind of get the gist of where the engine is going, what limitations the engine offers, and all this other stuff. So I was going to talk a little bit about limitation of logic because it's really important to me. As a programmer, I like to manipulate things. Something as simple as an if statement or an if anything. There is no algorithm to it. There is nothing like that. You basically work with what you were given, and what you were given is not enough. Of course, the community is a lovely place. I went on the Discord server and the forums, and they all seem to be lovely people, and they help instantly, and they all have their own little ways of doing specific things within the game engine. Of course, we're just loosely playing with the word game engine, but hey, that's just me. What they call it is hacks or workarounds. In Buildbox, you can't actually directly do something, so you just use the functions that are given to you to create your own kind of thing. But of course, most of the games that I see coming out of this are very similar to other games that we've seen. People are probably going to defend the statement and say there were games like The Pit and Color Switch which were very unique in the way that they were built, and yeah, they are pretty unique, but hey, they came out when Buildbox was kind of in early access in a way. What I mean by that is that the market wasn't saturated with these sort of games, and now it kind of is, so their uniqueness is debunked. Thrown away. I'm just saying that if you were an early user of Buildbox, then yeah, you probably get away with making unique games, but now it's incredibly hard, and I've seen so many games after watching tutorials and of course checking the App Store for any game made in Buildbox and looking at all this stuff. They're even running a game jam, and the results of that game jam are going to be very interesting, because if somebody can create a new idea out of the limitations that it has, that's an incredibly skilled thing, and I cannot wait to see some of these results. So the one saving grace to all of this is that they're actually really lovely people, the guys who run it, or they're just putting on a very good facade, but hey, you know, they could be doing that if they're not. No, I hope they're not. So lovely, so quick to respond. Their support team was emailing me straight away trying to convince me not to go off Buildbox, but of course, after you give them something like, I have financial problems at home, then that's a good way to get out of it without having to explain yourself. You know, if they want an explanation, then you don't have to give one. It took about 3 or 4 emails later, after a bunch of convincing, to actually cancel my subscription. Now the great thing about it was that they're really nice about it. They're not too harsh if you really don't want to be subbed to their engine anymore, which is really great. And of course the guy managed to get me off the day after, and also organized it so that the ticket would go at the end of the month, so I could still use the full version of Buildbox that I paid for until the month was over. But he did say in the email that it usually takes effect immediately, but because of the questioning that I put in and I was asking them about will it last this long, they actually extended it to the end of the month, which I think is pretty fair on their behalf, and good on them for that. In contrast to that, Unity is actually really great. I've been using it for a year, so it's kind of got a bit of a bias there, and of course after only a week of development I decided to do this, which I guess some people could say is not really that fair. You didn't give it a full test, but trust me, if you download the engine, you're just going to see how easy it is to learn the entire thing, and you can just spend 24 hours on it non-stop. I really wanted to create my own gameplay type, and the only way to do this is possibly learning the code behind the engine. Usually in game development there's a structure you need to abide by, and obviously that comes with creating an idea first. If you start making a game with no idea, then it can of course turn out anyway, and if you want to really plan it out, then an idea is usually very necessary. I've said this before and I really truly stand by it. You pick your engine based on your idea. If your idea is going to not work with one engine and work with another, then of course you pick your engine depending on the idea, alright? If you're wanting to take game development seriously in a sense of programming, do not get Buildbox whatsoever. Trust me, it is not worth your time, because the logic that goes behind Buildbox does not apply to the programming languages. Usually skills are transferable between engines. If you go from Unreal to Unity and Unity to Unreal, they're very similar engines, and of course you can learn based on what you've learned on the previous engine, but Buildbox to any other game engine is going to be a very difficult thing, especially if you've been dealing with Buildbox's version of logic. Their logic is not algorithmic, and it will not help you get into programming. So if you want to get into programming, just don't use Buildbox 100%, it's not worth your time. It does cater very well to artists. If you are an artist and want to create a game but you don't want to learn the programming side, then Buildbox is probably a great engine for you, and it's definitely something you should try out, because the artwork packages that they give you are very limiting, of course, and you're usually using sprites and stuff that everybody else has access to, which means it's not going to be very unique. But if you are an artist, of course, you can create your own skin to a already made game type. Then of course it's not hard for you to tweak some of the stuff involving gameplay. If you have some very unique vision or very unique art style, this engine is probably going to serve you very well, if you don't want to learn programming, that is. Of course, another great thing about it is that the level design aspect is very cool. You can actually make endless games very easily, and of course everything is just so easy to make, and you can learn it in a day after watching a few of their tutorials. Of course, I wouldn't recommend watching any other tutorials. Their tutorials seem to be the best, and they have a range of things, including how to publish and market your game, which is a very important topic that we don't talk about. And this right here is the one thing that I believe Buildbox is great at, and I wish Unity did it. Buildbox is great for putting ads onto your games, for putting banner ads onto your games, interstitial ads onto your games, rewarded videos to your games. All that stuff is in box, and it's really good, and you can definitely make quite a bit of money off that. In their terms, they love to promote the fact that they got so many games into the top 100 on Google Play and of course the App Store, and that's a really important thing. If an engine has managed to do that, does not mean that you can, but it's definitely encouraging that this is what people like, and a lot of the games people like and play was actually made in this engine. It's a pretty good selling point. I mean, they love to brag about the whole we've reached top 100 so many times. Our company itself has got more than 60 million downloads, but don't believe everything at face value. Of course, they are using a more modern version of the engine. As much as the monetization is great and all of that stuff is great, trust me on this. They have Buildbox 3 already out, and their company is clearly already using them. and this is a bad sign. They're not exactly selling Buildbox 3 to the public. They are keeping Buildbox 3 within their company, a very strategic move of course, and they are basically, probably in my opinion, going to make as many games as they possibly can using Buildbox 3 before releasing it to the public. And the only way I know that Buildbox 3 already exists is that the Game Jam winners receive a version of Buildbox 3, which means they're limiting the amount of people that can actually use it, and I think this plays a massive part in the successful games that go onto the App Store. As in, they're trying to get as much out of the engine before giving it away to other people, and of course out of the other people that they actually sell it to, there's going to be very few people there who are going to use the engine in a unique way, given that they've probably given it to people like developers for Ketchup or much larger companies who can actually afford to pay for it. Point is, great strategy move on their behalf. Make as many games as you can in your own engine before releasing it to the public, and of course once the public gets it, there are not as many unique games that they can make or unique game types that they can make. So you're still making money out of it by selling it to other people, so that's multiplying the income by infinity, just to get as much out of the engine. So very, very clever company. I would not recommend it to many people. I think artists are the only people that will benefit from it to get into the gaming industry. And that's about it. So I asked you guys on Discord what you guys would like to know about the engine. We're going to go through a few questions and try and answer as many as we can. So yeah, thank you to all the people who sent in their questions. Buildbox video, is it paid promotion or are you just making a video to review it? I'm just making a video to review it. They have absolutely no input whatsoever into this. Hi, is Buildbox a new engine? Absolutely not. This is, again, going on my conspiracy theory for the rest of it, which is basically saying that no, it's not a new engine. I think this engine has been around for a while. I even think that Buildbox 3 has been around for a while, just of course not available to the public. Is Buildbox a good engine for a 2D company games producing? Okay, bad English there, but yeah, basically it can only make 2D games so far. It can of course make isometric games as well, but isometric in 2D. So yeah. Oh, this guy sent in quite a lot. Thank you, Miro. Is it possible to import and work with 3D assets? Absolutely not, but of course you can use the hack around that, which is to record them in a 2D kind of format, and of course make a sprite sheet with a 3D model if you so wish. But that's a bit of a stretch for what you're trying to achieve. What platform does it support? Are there any plans to support more platforms in the future or to expand to other genres like web games? Now, I'm not too sure about web games and stuff like that, but I know it basically supports every form of phone game and also, I believe, Windows Store, which basically means it can be exported to PC if it's on the Windows Store, or just Windows phones, tablets, laptops, all that stuff. Buildbox devs say that you have access to the source code of the game after you export it. What language are the games made in? Now, once again, I'm not too sure what language the games are made in. I should probably look this up. I'm not going to look it up. I have coffee to drink, and this is all I can say about that, is that if you have to program the game outside of the engine and tweak some of the functions outside of the engine, then there's no point in buying the engine. You may as well create your own. What's your opinion about Buildbox not granting the user access to their game's logic? Honestly, that's the worst part about this. Without it, without any form of logic, it just destroys the entire engine, in my opinion, but that's coming from somebody who likes to code a little bit and who likes to write their own logic to create a game. How easy is it to make a build of the game? Are the menus intuitive enough? Do you need to download any dependencies to build from for Apple, and is it directly supported? All in package. Once again, it's not all in package based on the fact that you have to kind of compile it in other programs in order to get it into an APK, which is Android, which is something I've worked for in the past, or something I've worked towards in the past. Honest to God, everything inside the game engine looks great. The menus are great. Everything is perfectly laid out. The only problem is there's no logic, and that is legitimately make or break for me. What's the biggest drawback of the engine? I understand it's supposed to be simple and have basic things that you cannot write on your own code. It's just weird English, but could you, for example, make a main menu, add your own music and sound effects, virtual joysticks and stuff for phone builds? Yes, you definitely can. The phone builds are quite cool in that, and they already have some kind of presets for that. If you want to make a platformer, they've got the left, right, and jump buttons already there, which is very, very cool, and stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. Mixing Buildbox into Unity would be really cool, because if you had that sort of simplicity to get the stuff that you really don't want to spend hours and hours working on in Unity, that would be great, wouldn't it? I mean, the monetization thing is definitely something I wish Unity had such a simple version of that, but they don't. I'm sure there's assets out there that make it a lot easier for you. I've never used them. Of course, advertising is not something I've focused on in many of my games, as you've probably seen in the past. I've only put in-app purchases in one game ever, and that was Eagle, and in basically everything else there is absolutely no ad revenue coming in, absolutely nothing. So that's just me. Oh, and yes, you can create your own menus, add your own music, add your own sound effects. All of that stuff is all in drag and drop form, and it's actually really easy to do. So I do respect them for having such great stuff in there. Is there good documentation available online and explains how you might do something? Are there good tutorials on YouTube, for example, to show how to do a variety of things? Beautiful. That is an awesome question. Short answer, yes, their documentation is incredibly accurate. They tell you about every single thing you need to know. There's nothing skipped out of it. I read through the entire thing, and it's great what they say in there. They basically dumb it down so that somebody who's never used a game engine before can understand it. It's really simple. But of course, due to the limited amount of features that the engine actually has, it's a very short documentation, but the tutorials online are really good if you want to get into making your own game. If you're a visual learner, then their tutorials are perfect. So just go ahead and say it's like Brackeys for Buildbox. But if it was the other way around, obviously Buildbox cannot support things that Unity or Unreal make. 100% no. No, definitely not. Hi, how beginner friendly is the engine? Incredibly beginner friendly. Depending on the way that you use it, you obviously can use it in a professional capacity, as many companies seem to be doing now, because of how easy it is to make games. Like, you can make a game every single week. Of course, you're only limited by the ideas, and how good the game is very dependent on a lot of factors. If you're a beginner and kind of on the fence of whether you want to take game development or not, then of course Buildbox is actually a really good engine for that, because it lets you get straight into it and you can make a game very quickly if you don't have the patience for it. But if you're thinking of having game development as like a long-term career, just don't use it. I don't think it's worth your time. A comparison to other game engines would be awesome. The only thing I think I can compare this to is actually Game Maker in its early stages, but once again, even Game Maker had a bit of algorithm there, but it was basically a drag and drop kind of engine. Actually, this thing would be very similar to an engine called Scratch, if you remember Scratch. But even Scratch had logic to it. Oh, this is difficult. You know, apples and oranges. Buildbox is a very unique piece of software. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. So that's basically it for the questions. That's basically it for the entire video. To sum up, do not take everything I say as very direct. This is just my opinion, and it comes from somebody who's been using a lot of other game engines. If you are on the fence on what to use and you are trying to think, hey, Buildbox is something I may use you know, in the future, and it might actually get me quite a bit of money, you may be right. Don't exactly be discouraged from taking a look into it and getting a full kind of perspective of it. And to Trey and all the creators of the engine, I don't mean you guys any harm. Guys, I loved your engine, I gave you money, so you can at least let me keep this review up. And the community for Buildbox, you guys are definitely awesome, and I don't mean any harm to the Buildbox community. I seem to like the way you guys operate. It's just not for me. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you get a perspective other than the people who actually upload videos for it, which I notice is very positive all the time when they talk about Buildbox, and there's not many people who go on and make videos about the negatives about it, but hopefully you guys get a little bit of a great overview of the entire thing. As per usual, if you want to follow me on any social media, you can find all the links to that in the description below, and of course subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of this type of stuff. Patreon, of course, is down below, and I forgot to thank the patrons. We need to thank the patrons. So, thank you very much to the patrons coming up on the screen right now. Thank you, and you, and you. Also, special thanks to myself, Ollie, who once again is also still creating a website for us, and it looks amazing, guys. It's basically just got everything me. It's very narcissistic, if I will say so myself. I mean, the software was not free, so if you want to support the channel and want to see me review stuff that actually costs money to see whether or not you should actually buy it, then of course, link for the patrons should be down in the description below. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I'll leave you to your stuff. Go be productive again, and I shall see you when I see you.